5 days after my C-section, my husband pressed $50 into my hand, pointed toward the city bus stop, and drove away in my luxury SUV with his mother sitting comfortably in the back seat. "Don't make a scene," he said before closing the driver's door. I stood outside Manhattan Medical Center holding our 5-day-old son while fresh stitches burned across my abdomen. Every step felt like a knife twisting inside me, yet the man who had promised to love me forever couldn't even spare one seat in my own vehicle. People walking past slowed down and stared. Some looked confused. Others looked uncomfortable. No one knew that the luxury SUV disappearing into traffic belonged to me. And no one, not even my husband, knew that the empire he proudly called his own had been built on a secret carrying my family name. My name is Emily Brooks. I'm 32 years old, and until that afternoon, I believed love meant sacrificing without keeping score. I believed a marriage became stronger every time one person chose kindness over pride. I believed supporting your husband through difficult years would make him appreciate you when success finally arrived. I was wrong. Success didn't reveal Nathan's character. It simply removed the mask he had been wearing. 5 days earlier, I had brought our son Ethan into the world through an emergency C-section after 21 exhausting hours of labor. The doctors warned me that recovery would be slow. They told me not to lift heavy bags, avoid unnecessary walking, and let my husband help me during the first few weeks. Nathan had nodded while the doctor explained everything. He even squeezed my hand and promised, "Don't worry. I'll take care of both of you." That promise lasted exactly 5 days. The automatic hospital doors opened behind me as the discharge nurse wheeled me toward the entrance. Ethan slept peacefully in my arms, wrapped in a soft white blanket with a tiny blue hat covering his dark hair. Looking at him was the only thing keeping me from collapsing. Nathan stood near the entrance checking messages on his phone. He barely looked up when the nurse smiled. "Congratulations again," she said warmly. "Your little family can finally go home." Nathan forced a polite smile before slipping his phone into his pocket. "Thanks." The nurse handed him a folder containing my medications, follow-up appointments, and recovery instructions. "She'll need plenty of rest," the nurse reminded him. "No unnecessary stress, and please make sure she avoids long walks." Nathan nodded impatiently. "Understood." The nurse disappeared back inside, leaving the three of us standing beneath the hospital entrance. I smiled at Nathan. "Can you carry the diaper bag? It's getting heavy." Instead of answering, he reached into his wallet. He counted 2 $20 bills, 1 $10 bill, and a few coins before placing them in my hand. "Here." I frowned. "What's this?" "Bus fare." For a second I genuinely thought he was joking. I even laughed quietly. Then I realized he wasn't laughing. "Nathan, I need the SUV." I stared at him in disbelief. "What do you mean you need it?" "My parents landed an hour ago. So, they've been looking forward to celebrating Ethan's birth. I booked lunch downtown." I blinked several times. "You mean, you're taking them to lunch?" "Yes." "And what about me?" "You'll go home." "How?" He pointed toward the intersection across the street. "The M15 stops over there." I felt every bit of color leave my face. I just had surgery. So, I can barely stand. Nathan rubbed the back of his neck with obvious frustration. "Emily, please don't start." "I'm not starting anything. You're making this into a bigger issue than it needs to be." My voice became quieter. "You want me to carry our newborn onto a city bus 5 days after major surgery? It's not rush hour." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The doctor literally said, "My sister was shopping 3 days after giving birth." I looked at him. What does that have to do with me? She wasn't this dramatic. The word hit me harder than I expected. Dramatic. Not exhausted. Not recovering. Not in pain. Dramatic. Before I could answer, a familiar perfume filled the air. Nathan's mother, Linda Carter, walked out of the hospital wearing a cream designer dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She smiled brightly at her son. "There you are." Nathan kissed her cheek. "Sorry you had to wait." She waved dismissively. It wasn't long. Only then did she notice me. Oh. Her eyes briefly landed on Ethan. He looked so tiny. She didn't ask how I felt. She didn't congratulate me. Instead she looked at Nathan. "We're going to lose our reservation." Nathan's younger sister, Olivia, followed close behind while scrolling through social media. She glanced at me and smirked. Still here. Nathan laughed softly. We're leaving now. His father adjusted his expensive watch before speaking for the first time. I hope traffic isn't bad. That was it. Not one member of his family asked if I needed help carrying my newborn. Not one offered to switch seats with me. Not one acted as though the woman who had given birth to their grandson mattered. Nathan picked up my discharge bag and tossed it into the back of the Range Rover. I watched in stunned silence. "Pie bag. You'll collect it later. My medication is inside. You'll survive." Linda climbed comfortably into the back seat. Arthur sat beside her. Olivia claimed the front passenger seat. Nathan opened the driver's door before turning toward me one last time. "The bus should be here in about 10 minutes. I swallowed hard. "Nathan, please." For just a moment I hoped he would realize how cruel this looked. Instead he sighed. "Emily." His voice carried the same tone people use with difficult children. "Don't embarrass me in front of my family." Then he closed the door. The engine started. The SUV slowly rolled away from the curb. I stood there watching my own vehicle disappear while my newborn son slept peacefully against my chest. The silence around me became almost unbearable. A few seconds later, the discharge nurse rushed back outside after realizing I was still standing there. "Mrs. Carter?" I forced a smile. "I'm all right." She looked toward the empty street. "Where's your husband?" "He had somewhere else to be." The nurse looked at my face, then at Ethan before quietly understanding everything. "I'm so sorry." Those 3 words nearly broke me, because they came from a complete stranger. Not from my husband. Not from his family. The city bus pulled up with a loud hiss of air brakes. Climbing those steep metal steps felt impossible. The driver immediately noticed me struggling. "Take your time, ma'am." An elderly woman stood from her seat without hesitation. "Honey, you sit here." I thanked her with trembling lips. As I carefully lowered myself into the seat, sharp pain shot through my abdomen. I closed my eyes and focused on Ethan's breathing. He deserved a mother who stayed strong, even if she felt completely shattered inside. The bus pulled away. Only 2 blocks later we stopped at a red light. I looked out the window. My breath caught. Right beside the bus sat my dark blue Range Rover. Nathan was laughing at something Olivia had said. Linda leaned forward happily talking about lunch. Arthur smiled while reading something on his phone. It looked like the perfect family. Except the woman who had nearly died bringing their grandson into the world wasn't included. The traffic light turned green. The SUV accelerated and disappeared ahead. At that exact moment something inside me changed. My heart didn't break. It hardened. Because I finally understood something that had taken me 2 years to see. Nathan Carter didn't love me anymore. Maybe he never truly had. He loved what he believed I could do for him. The old woman beside me gently touched my arm. "Sweetheart." I turned toward her. No good man leaves the mother of his child like that. I smiled weakly. "I guess I chose the wrong man." She shook her head. "No." Her voice was calm. "You simply haven't chosen yourself yet." Those words echoed inside my mind for the rest of the ride. Nathan believed I was nothing more than an ordinary stay-at-home wife whose father had retired from a small construction business years ago. That story had never been true. My father wasn't retired. And his company wasn't small. For 3 years I had hidden my real identity because I wanted someone to fall in love with Emily, not with the Brooks family fortune. My father respected that decision, even though he warned me one day the truth might become necessary. As I looked down at my sleeping son, I realized that day had finally arrived. With shaking hands I unlocked my phone. I stared at one contact I hadn't used for personal problems since my wedding. I pressed the call button. The phone rang once. Then twice. Finally, I heard the familiar voice that had protected me my entire life. "Emily?" I was about to leave for the hospital. "Are you and my grandson on your way home?" The moment I heard my father's voice, every ounce of strength I had been holding together began to crumble. "Dad." A painful silence filled the line. Then he asked one quiet question. "What happened?" I looked out of the bus window as tears rolled silently down my face. For the first time since marrying Nathan Carter, I stopped protecting my husband. My father didn't speak for several seconds. I could hear nothing except his breathing. For 32 years, Charles Brooks had built one of the largest infrastructure companies in America. Thousands of employees depended on him. Governors respected him. CEOs waited months just to get 30 minutes on his calendar. But I had never heard him this quiet. Finally, he asked one question. "Emily, where are you?" "I'm on the M15 bus." "Stay exactly where you are." "Dad, I'm coming." The call ended. Less than 15 minutes later, the bus stopped outside Lexington Avenue. A black executive sedan was already waiting beside the curb. Two security officers stepped forward the moment the doors opened. One carried my diaper bag. The other carefully helped me out while making sure Ethan remained comfortable in my arms. The passengers stared in confusion. The elderly woman who had given me her seat smiled warmly. "I knew someone loved you." I smiled through my tears. "Thank you for reminding me that kindness still exists." As the sedan pulled away, I saw my father standing outside another vehicle. The moment I stepped out, he walked toward me. He didn't ask a single question. He simply wrapped one arm around my shoulders and kissed Ethan's forehead. "I'm sorry, sweetheart." Those 4 words broke the wall I had been holding together all afternoon. I cried against his shoulder while he quietly stood there. When I finally calmed down, he looked directly into my eyes. "Did Nathan know who you really are?" I slowly shook my head. "No." "Did he ever ask how a small software company kept getting meetings with billion-dollar investors?" "He thought he earned them." Dad nodded slowly. "I suspected that." Years earlier, when Nathan's company had been struggling, every major investor who agreed to meet him had done so because of one reason. Not because my father demanded it, but because they respected Charles Brooks. Dad had never invested money into Nathan's company. He had simply opened doors. Nathan had walked through them. Unfortunately, he convinced himself he had built the hallway. Dad looked toward his assistant. "Schedule an emergency board meeting." "Yes, sir." "And tell every company under Brooks Global that all personal recommendations connected to Nathan Carter are suspended until further notice." His assistant nodded immediately. Within minutes, dozens of phone calls began moving across New York City. Meanwhile, Nathan was laughing inside one of Manhattan's most expensive restaurants. His mother raised a glass. A toast. Nathan smiled proudly. "To the future." Everyone lifted their glasses. None of them noticed Nathan's phone vibrating across the table. He ignored the first call, then the second, then the third. Finally, Olivia frowned. "Aren't you going to answer that?" Nathan sighed before picking up the phone. "What?" His chief financial officer sounded terrified. "Where are you?" "At lunch." "You need to come back." "I'm busy." "No, you don't understand." Nathan stood from his chair. "What happened?" "Our Series B funding has been frozen." Nathan laughed. "Impossible." "I wish it was." "What reason did they give?" "They said they're reviewing new information regarding company leadership." Nathan's smile disappeared. "I'll handle it." He hung up before anyone at the table could ask questions. 5 minutes later, another call arrived. Then another. One partnership canceled. Another postponed. 2 investors requested immediate audits. A third canceled next week's presentation. By the time lunch ended, Nathan's confidence had completely vanished. He drove straight to his office. The atmosphere felt different the moment he walked inside. Employees stopped talking when they saw him. His assistant avoided eye contact. His CFO was already waiting. Nathan slammed his briefcase onto the table. "Tell me exactly what's happening." The CFO swallowed nervously. "We've lost 4 investors." "What?" "They aren't officially withdrawing." "Then what are they doing?" "They're waiting." "For what?" The room became silent. Finally, the CFO answered. "They keep asking the same question." Nathan frowned. "What question?" "Who is Emily Brooks?" Nathan blinked. "My wife." "Apparently." "Why?" "We don't know." Nathan forced a laugh. "This has nothing to do with Emily." His assistant hesitated before sliding a folder across the table. "Actually." Nathan opened it. Inside were copies of emails from investors dating back almost 3 years. One sentence appeared repeatedly. "Recommended through the Brooks family network." Nathan read it again. Then again. His heartbeat became louder. The Brooks family? His assistant nodded carefully. We investigated after investors started asking. Nathan looked up slowly. What did you find? The Brooks family owns Brooks Global Corporation. Nathan stared blankly. The Brooks Global? Yes. The $70 billion company? Yes. His breathing became uneven. My wife's father is Charles Brooks. Nathan's knees almost gave out. Every meeting, every introduction, every opportunity, every open door. It had all started because of Emily, not him. Back at my father's estate, I sat in the nursery holding Ethan while watching the evening news. A business reporter appeared on screen. Carter Technologies has announced that several investment negotiations have been delayed pending corporate review. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I simply continued rocking my son. An hour later my phone rang. Nathan. I ignored it. He called again. And again. By the 10th call he left a voicemail. Emily, please answer. We need to talk. I deleted it without listening to the end. The following morning he appeared outside my father's estate. Security stopped him at the gate. I need to see my wife. One guard answered calmly. Ms. Brooks isn't accepting visitors. Nathan looked stunned. Brooks. Yes, sir. My wife lives with me. Not anymore. Nathan stood there in complete silence. At that moment my father walked out of the house. He approached the gate with the calm confidence of a man who never needed to raise his voice. Nathan immediately lowered his head. Mr. Brooks. Dad looked at him for several seconds. You finally know who I am. Nathan swallowed. I love Emily. Dad's expression never changed. No. He spoke quietly. You loved the life she quietly built around you. Nathan tried to explain. I made a terrible mistake. Dad nodded. You certainly did. I'll apologize. You should. I'll change. Dad looked directly into his eyes. Character isn't revealed by success, Mr. Carter. Another pause followed. It's revealed by how you treat people when they need you most. Nathan had no answer. Dad turned and walked back toward the house. He never looked back. 3 months later I filed for divorce. Nathan didn't fight it. He knew there was nothing left to save. The court granted me full custody of Ethan, while Nathan received scheduled visitation rights. His company survived, but only as a shadow of what it had once promised to become. Investors no longer believed in the man who had mistaken borrowed opportunities for personal greatness. As for me, I never wanted revenge. I only wanted respect. The day my husband left me at a bus stop 5 days after my C-section, he believed he was abandoning a weak woman who had nowhere else to go. Instead, he reminded me exactly who I was. And sometimes the greatest revenge isn't destroying someone's life. It's refusing to let them keep destroying yours.